Welcome to the Open-E Data Storage Software version 7, known as DSS V7. We're going to be showing you how to configure the Active-Active iSCSI Failover solution with DSS V7. And probably the best way to start off with is to show you an overview and a diagram of how we're going to configure this, what are the recommendations, and the setup. If we look at this drawing here, you'll notice that you have two servers. You'll see on the left there is a DSS V7. It will be known as the primary node, but we're going to note it as node A. And on the right, you'll see the secondary node. We're going to be calling that node B. We require at least 4 NICs because of this is how the cluster is going to be able to work for the iSCSI failover. You'll notice that we have 4 NICs, ETH0 through 3 on both sides. On the interface, you'll see that the IP addresses on the third octet, 192.168.1.220 all the way to 220, 3, 220, and 4, 220. And all conversely, on the right side, you'll see the secondary node as 221 all the way down. What is required is that you need 1 NIC for the web GUI management, and that'll be on the E0 that we're going to be presenting. The volume replication, which will be ETH1, will be on a 2.220. This is going to be a dedicated NIC that you're going to use for the volume replication. This is going to replicate the data to the systems of the secondary and primary nodes. You'll notice that there's a node in the middle. We kind of recommend if you can directly connect to the DSS V7, optionally you can also use 10 gig E, which saves you on the cost on the switch. So this is really a viable option for you to look into, because if you can get a 10 gig E, the cost savings just directly connecting without a switch is far superior than using 1 gig E. Next, you'll see that the storage client access, NICs 2 and 3, will have a virtual IP address that is necessary to have, because when we set this up, we're going to be setting it up for the local and remote resources for the iSCSI targets. So they're going to be used in this, and this is not MPIO, multipathing. If you're looking to do multipathing, very simply, just add another 2 NICs, and of course you'll be creating 2 additional virtual IP addresses for those NICs. If you notice the right up top ping nodes, the ping nodes, if you look at the IP addresses, those IP addresses are corresponding to E2 and 3. You want to keep them on the same subnet. The ping node assists with the auxiliary connection for E1, 2, and 3 for the heartbeat. And so you really want to make sure that a good ping node would be, let's say, a router, a VMware server, something that's going to have a pretty much good uptime. So I think right now we're pretty much ready to go with configuring up the DSS V7, so let's go ahead and connect. One of the first things you'll notice is I did set on the tabs here node A and node B. This helps for the eye to hear. And to set that is, you also want to set the host name. It's very simple. Just go to Setup, Network Interfaces. And here you'll see that I've set up the host name for node-A and of course the numbers. When you install DSS V6, what's going to do is going to state DSS and of course the numbers. Just replace the DSS, the letters, and put node-A, and then for node-B, go ahead and configure that. Next, all you have to do is configure the iSCSI volumes. To do that, just go to Configuration, Volume Manager, Volume Groups. Now, I've already configured my array, so my units are done, just to simplify and speed up the process. You'll see VG00 is a default volume group. You can have more than 1 volume group. And I've already configured 2 iSCSI volumes. And by the way, when I put my mouse over it, you'll notice that it denotes it as an iSCSI volume block IO. I kind of recommend that. And also, if you notice on the right, you'll see that we have the replication task associated with it. If you notice, I need 2 iSCSI volumes, and that's what you're noticing right now. So you can have more than this, obviously. If you have more targets that you would like to replicate in the cluster, you can do that. You have 10 more. But you want to make sure that you have to have at least 2 for what you're wanting to do. So here I am showing 100 gig. So I have to create 2 iSCSI volumes, either equal in size, though one can be 70 gig and one can be 30 gig, as long as node A and B will match. So if I see LV000 that I have here, I want to make sure that the node that I'm going to be replicating has the same size. So we've already configured the node B. Let's go take a look at node A. Again, we're going to Configuration, Volume Manager, volume groups. Already configured my array, so let's go right into the volume group. And I left only one because I want to demonstrate how easy it is to create an iSCSI volume. And to do that, just scroll on down. You'll see the action pull-down menu. Here you can create many volumes, but for this focus, we're going to just do iSCSI volumes because we're creating the active-active solution. You can just create the volume, or you can create a new target. If you do the new target, it's automatically going to turn on that target as well as that one. So I really don't want to do that right now. Let's just create the volume. Select volume replication and enter the exact amount that I need for node B. So this way, LV00 on node A matches with LV00 on node B, and conversely, LV001 to LV001 on node B. Once you've done this, you're ready for the next step, which is going to the volume replication. Very simple. Right here on the left, you'll see volume replication. In the volume replication mode, you'll see that by default, DSS V7 will set them as source. What you need to do is to make sure that one of the logical volumes is set for source on one of the nodes, and on node B, set for destination. So for simplicity reasons, what we're going to do is we're going to set LV00 to source and LV001 to destination. And of course, conversely, on node B, we want to do the opposite. Let me show you. So we'll go to volume replication. Here we'll have LV00, and remember node A has it set to source, so on node B, we need to make sure it's on destination. And on LV001, we want to make sure it's on source because node A is set for destination. All right. Once we're done with that, let's go back to node A, and next is the host binding. So what this is that we're going to be connecting to the node B for the remote node IP address. So if you remember, that IP address is going to be 2.221. Now, the remote node GUI administrative password by default is admin, and that's lowercase, by the way. So once we connect, what we want to be able to see is a state that states reachable. And this means that they're communicating with each other. They're binding between the two NIC interfaces with their IP addresses, and it should state right up here is that it's reachable. And there we go. The next step is going to be creating a new volume replication task. So we'll just create a simple name. We'll just call it M1 for mirror1. Obviously, it selects the source volume and the destination volume LV00. If this does not work, well, then you probably need to check the size of the iSCSI volumes that you created. I'm going to leave the bandwidth default to 40. I'm on a 1 gig E, by the way, so that means I'm only going to be able to do 100 meg at the max. But if I have multiple tasks, keep in mind that you might want to divide. So if I had 10 iSCSI volumes that I want to replicate, you might want to set that to 10 because you're going to divide up the bandwidth appropriately for that 1 gig E. Again, as I mentioned before, if you're looking to do 10 gig E, you can increase that amount. So what we've created now, here's our task on the bottom. It's completed, and what we want to do is click on the action play button. What it's going to be doing is creating the synchronization between the two, and it's going to verify, give us the start time. And what we want to do is want to verify that both those volumes are consistent. To do that, just go to Status, Task, and you'll see the task come right up here. And what we want to look for is this right here where it states consistent for both the source and destination volume. Once you've done this, then you want to go to node B and create your task as well. So here we want to, if you notice, it's already locked down. You cannot change it or modify it unless you stop the task. So if we look at LV001, we're going to go ahead and create that. So we'll call that M2 for mirror 2, and we see our selected volumes, and we'll go ahead and create it. And you'll also notice that it created the reverse task from the mirror 1 from node A, and now our task is ready to start. Let's go ahead and click the play button. And once this is done, we want to check the status. So to do that, we'll go to Status, Task, and again, we want to be looking for consistent, and we have them consistent. Next step is to go to the iSCSI Target Manager, and we'll need to do this on both of them. So we'll go to Configuration, iSCSI Target Manager, and Targets. Now, what we want to do here is to create the same naming convention. So you want to make sure that you state mirror is simple that I put together. So we'll just go mirror 01, because we're going to need 2 targets for each of our iSCSI volumes that we're going to be replicating. We got target 0, and then we'll create mirror 02. And now we have created 2 of our targets for each of our volumes. Let's start with target 0. And what you want to do, and we're going to start on node A, but what we're going to do is just saving our time, is we want to make sure our SCSI IDs and LUN numbers are the same. So what we'll do is we'll go to node A, we'll go ahead and configure our targets, configuration, iSCSI target manager, and targets. We'll take off the default target name. We'll set that to mirror 1. And then we'll create our next one. We'll set that to mirror 02. Now we'll go to target 0. And what we want to do is copy the SCSI ID for LV00. We'll go ahead and enable it. And then we want to go to node B, and we want to paste the SCSI ID. And we'll enable that. So what you want to do is make sure that the target names are the same. If you look right up on top here, we do have mirror 01, target 0. We have the same SCSI ID, and sometimes I look at the last 3 letters. So I got capital D, capital Z, J, and the LUN number is the same, and see if it matches on node A. So it does match. If you look here, and also DZJ and LUN 0. Now let's go to target 1. You want to make sure the target name, the iSCSI ID, and the LUN number are the same. Let's go ahead and copy the SCSI ID and go ahead and enable the LUN. Go to node B, go to target 1, and we'll copy and we'll paste the SCSI ID from node A. And again, you just want to check, looks like 02, mirror 02 up here, and of course EVK, and we want to match, yep, EVK and mirror 2. Once you're done with that, we're ready for the next step, and that's to enable the failover service. So to do that, we go to Setup, Failover. And what's unique about this is that you only need to configure one of the nodes because it'll replicate the information over to the other node. When you first see the DSS V7 loaded in the failover manager, it says we have a few things to do, and it lets you know. It says in order to start the failover, it is required to configure basically the following. So we're going to need 2 auxiliary paths and at least 1 ping node. If you remember the drawing, we're going to set up more than 1, it's recommended, and at least 1 resource pool. So let's take a look at the drawing just to reference back again. Here are the ping nodes on the top right. We're going to be setting up the heartbeat for the volume replication NIC, E1, 2, and 3, and the storage client access NICs as well, and then we'll set up the virtual IP addresses. Okay, so let's go back to the DSS V7 and begin. Now automatically, since we already did the host binding with the volume replication, it automatically assigned the NIC for the volume replication. But now we need to add the additional 2 for our storage client access NICs. So we're going to select 3, and also on the local remote, and the network address of 3.2.21 on the remote. Let's go ahead and add. And then we need to add the next one. So what we'll do is once that's complete, we'll add the next one, and then we'll start enabling the ping nodes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and E3 on the local and E3 on the remote. And notice the IP address theme is the same. Okay, you want to bear that in mind. Now, what's this doing is actually configuring also node B. So all this information is also being transferred over to node B. It's really nice and it saves time. Now the ping nodes. Again, the ping node can be pretty much anything that you want it to be, but best to have it on the same subnet as your client access NICs or the virtual IP address. So here we'll have 4.8. We'll add that. And now you'll see that its state is reachable. Now we'll go ahead and add the other ping node. And once this is complete, we're ready for the next step. So we can go ahead and scroll down and let that work. By the way, you want to be able to keep the same values for the failover trigger policy that is there. Keep the default values. More information can be supplied if you just click on the question mark here, and you'll get a plethora of information about what the failover on IO's triggers can do for you. Let's go on down to creating the storage resources pool that we're going to have in the resource pool manager. If you notice, I have set up here node A. Again, this is valuable for identifying the local node, and of course node B for the remote node. To create the virtual IP address is very simple. Again, if we look at that diagram that we have, let's go ahead and show it to you, reference back to it. We see that we want to create a virtual IP addresses for the E2 NIC to be 192.168.20.100, and for E3, we want to set that for 30.100. Okay, so let's go ahead and configure it. We'll go ahead and add our virtual IP address. And we are going to select E2 and make sure that we select E2 on the remote node. And here we're going to set our subnet mask and add. And once this is complete, then what we're going to want to do is basically go over to the iSCSI resources tab next to it and configure to add that target that we first created for our cluster environment that we're going to have. Keep in mind you can have more than one, and you'll see this right here in the iSCSI resources. We want to click Add, Remove Targets, and here is one of the targets that we created. Add that into the cluster and hit Apply. Now, let's say something didn't, it comes up with an error. It'll pretty much give you a message where you need to repair or make a modification to. Maybe you didn't have the target name the same or the SCSI ID the same. It'll point you to it. So what you're looking for is this replication state that it states it is okay. And at this point, we're ready to set it for a remote node. So here, let's go ahead and add our virtual IP address. And again, we set this one for 192.168.30.100. Of course, we're going to use the next NIC, which will be E3, and we want to make sure it matches for the node B, the remote node. Set our subnet mask and click Add. Now, what we're going to, after this is done, we need to go ahead and select for our iSCSI resources. So we'll use the target that we created. If you remember, it was the target name, the date, and near 02. And we click on iSCSI Resource tab, add the available targets to the cluster, and click Apply. If you notice, remember I stated that the DSS V7 will transfer the information over to node B. Well, that's exactly what's going on. If we go ahead and look at setup failover in node B, you'll see all the information's been transferred. So this is really helpful. It saves time, and it looks like we're ready to go. So let's go back to node A, and everything's in sync. We see all the information here. It says everything has been set up properly, cluster is ready to be started. So let's go ahead and just click on the Start button. Also, if you wanted to find details, if you just want to find information about your local and remote node resources pool, you can click right here on Details and take it right to it. So it's a real quick step process to help you out. Again, if you want to find out information on the particular iSCSI volume, here again, you're looking at consistency. It stays up to date. So there's a lot of valuable information providing you basically on your volume replication status. So this is really good for it. All right. So now this takes a few seconds to do because there's a lot of syncing, a lot of information being shared, checking the ping nodes, verifying the auxiliary ports between the two DSS V7s. Okay, looks like we're running, and everything is basically done. So that's as easy as it can get. By the way, I want to point out a very unique feature in the DSS is we can remove those targets over to the other node. So if I wanted to move and be able to perform maintenance on, let's say, node A, I can move that resource, that target, over to node B. Very simply, just go to move to remote node, and we're moving that resources over to node B. So if I wanted to take the server down, perform some maintenance, be able to do certain things to it, it's not a problem. And also, if you notice on the other side, node B, it's stating the same status. And of course, it's updated. So we're on node B now. If we scroll down, you'll see that it's now on the local node. Conversely, I can switch back and forth. So I can even move the local resources from node B over to node A. So it's very unique. And also, if you want to, if the system comes back up and you've already repaired node A, you can move it back to the resources over to node A. So this is very unique and very special, and especially giving you the option for maintenance. Also, if you have a lot of heavy I/O and you want to move resources over to node B, this is a real nice feature to have. Well, thank you. And by the way, I just want to let you know that DSS V7 trial version comes with 60 days of free trial, and it does come with the active-active solution, so you can test it in your environment. Thank you.